Primary School is a small school 20 kilometres north of Gawler. Every morning, before anybody arrives at school, a group of children known as the animal monitors come to do their daily duties, which is caring for some animals. Two of their animals are a pet lamb, Susie, and Samantha, their pet goat. The monitors really love their animals and care for them by running and playing with them for exercise. They feed the animals good, nutritious hay and oats and long, luscious green grass. They give the animals crystal clear water as well. As well as Samantha and Susie, they also have two rabbits, known as Fred Zeppelin and Sherry Zeppelin. The animal monitors care for these pets by feeding them pellets and giving them nice, cool water. One day in the school playground, some boys were practicing for the big match next Saturday. Until David Bickley kicked an enormous screw punt straight over the next door neighbour's fence. Oh no, not the next door neighbour's yard, because next door lived a grouchy old hag. All the children pleaded and pleaded to the old hag, but she was as stubborn as an ox and refused to give the football back to the children. They cursed and yelled and called her nasty names. Next morning, when the monitors were on their way to do Samantha and Susie, they saw that the gate to the animal shelter was open. Then they discovered the animals were missing. They began to search frantically, looking for any little clue that could lead them to the missing animals. Suddenly Sandra found a clue. Quickly they began to file into a line. Cleverly they followed the droppings that the animals left for them to follow. The trail went through the playground, around the turtle, out onto the footpath, along Annie Terrace, over Mr. Fisher's fence, and into his prized rose garden. Oh no, not Mr. Fisher's prized roses. They are having a ball of a time, munching on the pink and red, yellow rose petals. One by one they disappeared down the throats of the ravenous animals. Licking their chops, they were dragged back to the schoolyard by the animal monitors and were tied up securely for the rest of the day. Suddenly, Darren noticed that they were 20 minutes late for school. Quickly and quietly, they crept, hoping that the crabby old teacher wouldn't notice they were late. But the crabby old teacher was waiting at the doorstep like a hawk. Later that day, when they were working in the classroom, a little kid came bursting into the classroom with very bad news, that the rabbits had escaped. All the animal monitors ran out, knocking chairs and tables flying. They ran out the door to the rabbit cages, where they found the rabbits had escaped. The little kid was right. Suddenly Sandra saw a movement under the toilet, so the animal monitors rushed over to the toilet to see what the movement was. It was the two missing rabbits. The monitors struggled and reached, but they couldn't grab them. "They're over the other side," yelled Matthew, and they all ran over to the other side of the toilet. They jumped down and started to reach and struggle, trying to snatch their fur. Then Meredith yelled out, "They've gone back to the other side." They all rushed over the other side of the toilet. They tried to reach the troublesome rabbits, but they couldn't quite get to them. Then Marcia saw them back over the other side again. They all rushed around to the other side and lay down. Then Darren yelled out, "They're back over the other side again." Quicker than a flash, they tore around to the other side to try and catch the rabbits once and for all. Then Sandra noticed they were back over the other side, so they tore. Matthew and Joel got to there first. Then Matthew said, "I've got one." Matthew struggled to pull the rabbit out. Then Joel yelled, "I've got one too." 3 of the monitors rushed to the scene. Then Matthew suddenly pulled a rabbit out from under the building and held him securely. Then Joel pulled another rabbit out, and all of the animal monitors cheered, even though they were totally exhausted. After the experience with the rabbits, the animal monitors were getting fed up with the mischief with the animals. They wandered over, and there stood 2 tangled up animals. Oh no! I'll tell you now, it's very hard to untangle a stubborn goat and a stupid lamb. Meanwhile, at the school door stood the crabby old teacher, getting irritated by the children. The children were still trying to untangle the animals with great difficulties. Now the crabby old teacher was nearly in a fit. She was looking at her clock, getting infuriated. The animal monitors were still having a lot of trouble untangling the animals. The teacher came over, waving her finger, and grabbed Matthew by the shirt. He's always getting the blame. She dragged Matthew and the rest of the animal monitors over to the office. They were pushed and shoved. All the monitors were arguing about who was going to go in first. So they pushed the littlest one into the office of the nasty principal. Then came the other 6 terrified monitors. at the nasty principal. He yelled and waved his finger and threatened to send the animals to the abattoirs to be packed into plastic bags for pets' meat. The sad and disgruntled animal monitors walked towards the door. Some wise guide locked them in, so they had great difficulties trying to get out. On the way out, they all sat down on the step and started to curse and grumble. Suddenly, Marcia stopped their grumbling and told them she had a fantastic plan. The monitors sat and listened. They all agreed on the devious, cunning plan to capture the elusive animal prankster. Then they rushed off to set the plan into action. When they got to the animal shelter, Marcy and Darren showed the tennis net and how it was going to be used. Then Marcia and Darren showed the monitors where they were supposed to hide. David, being the smallest, was put into the rubbish bin. After all the monitors were put into their places, the two monitors that were left put up the net. In the spot where it was most likely to catch the prankster. The trap was set. Once in every minute, an animal monitor would pop up and have a quick look around for any mysterious person. After a while, Darren noticed a movement in the trees. Out from behind the trees came the animal prankster. Sandra looked up in amazement. Closer and closer she came. Closer and closer. The animal monitors were getting very excited. Closer and closer she walked. Even closer to the trap. Suddenly, Matthew noticed that the prankster was the old lady. Marcia felt a sneeze coming on, so Darren reached out and stopped her just in time. Closer to the trap she came. Then Darren gave the signal to Matthew to drop the net, so Matthew gave the net one almighty tug. They all jumped out of their hiding places and ran to the old lady, except for David, who couldn't quite get out of the rubbish bin. The monitors entwined the net around the old lady securely. After a while, Darren took Matthew over to the gate and told him to get the police. Some time later, with sirens blaring and blue lights flashing, the Hamley Bridge police came down the street and missed the turn-off. Matthew isn't a very good director of traffic. Finally, Mr. Mannion got into the school gate. After some difficulties, he came roaring towards the children. Mr. Mannion got out of the car and walked towards the children. He got his truncheon out and waved it at the old lady. The children held her tightly so she wouldn't get away. Then Mr. Mannion placed her into custody. He said, "Everything you say will be taken as evidence against you," as he put the handcuffs on her. They started towards the car. And shoved her in the car. Children were very proud of themselves as they waved goodbye. Suddenly, Joel noticed that David was missing. He was still in the rubbish bin. Matthew rushed over and let him out. He was very annoyed.
It was just another day in the dull, ordinary life of Wasleys Primary School. The children excitedly waited for the only bright spot in their day. The arrival of their much loved and cherished lady teachers. Without them, the school was no better than Devil's Island. Later that day, little Kim O'Leary was attending the animals in the animal shelter when out of the corner of his eye he spotted a strange attachment to the well-padded rump of Bambia pet sheep. Quicker than the speed of light, he dashed off with the discovery to the class council, knocking on the door. He was led into the room where the class council was meeting. As usual, Chairman Rick had total control of the meeting. Council members were listening attentively to Rick's wise ideas on how they could benefit the school. Treasurer Burrows was trying to balance his books, which was difficult considering the fact that the council was bankrupt. Marcia, the blonde bombshell secretary, was busily writing every intimate detail of the meeting. After a while, someone noticed Kim, who was getting irritated. He handed the chairman the note, which read, Immediately a wave of sheer misery swept over the class council. The chairman, Rick, angry with the demands of the kidnapper, announced his plan. He got the attention of the near-hysterical council easily and chose the best qualified members, and they changed their council role to that of detective. With all enthusiasm, they made a mad dash. They arrived minutes later, after several accidents, at the shelter where they started to look for clues. Then suddenly Detective Burrows made a discovery, a footprint, and a large one at that. As it was being studied intently by the intrepid detectives, Detective Collins drifted off and found another clue, probably dropped by the ever-clever Mrs. Young. With the authority of a general, Rick organised the group into a file and then proceeded to follow the tracks of the kidnapper. They tracked and tracked. In and out. Along the road. With delicate and smooth cunning. Until they met the mighty Ridley Arms Hotel. Hold it! Detective Cross ESP told her someone was missing. She counted them carefully and then stormed off in a dastardly black mood to collect the deserter. With several well-chosen words, Detective Cross led the stray sheep back to the search. Once again, they marched off into the sunset. After a long and tiring walk, the searchers came across a deserted house in the dazzling sunlight, which may be the hideout. They send Detective Buckby to case the joint. Despite the fact he stands out like a daffodil in the packet of Salvation Jane, he managed to get there unseen. Creeping silently up to the window, he spies an ugly sight. The unscrupulous kidnapper leering at his victims who are desperately trying to escape. Silently, Detective Buckby trots back to the patiently waiting comrades. And explains the situation thoroughly. After discussing the problem calmly, they hit upon a plan. So they set about setting it into action. Three of our heroes crept up to the hideout. And displayed a war dance to attract the attention of the villain. Of course it worked. And the vile villain set out to teach the detectives a lesson. Meanwhile, the other detectives were freeing the hostages. And making a clean getaway. While this was going on, our other heroes made one final attempt to fell the kidnapper. They leapt the viciously barbed fence with the grace and ease of gazelles. Fortunately, the villain wasn't so lucky, and was caught by the barbs on a very delicate part of his anatomy. It was easy to apply the chain and collar, and with the combined force of the detectives, the rotter was dragged away. Now locked up, the kids jeer him. And Bambi, don't be fooled by the name, is appointed to torment him. And so ends another day in the dull ordinary life of Wasleys Primary School.